That'd be great. So if we can start with a prayer, and we'll go from there.
Let us all pray. Oh, Heavenly Father, how blessed we are to have you in our presence and to be with this family, this grieving family, but a time to celebrate Harriet's life and all the memories that we share. We were so fortunate to have her in memory and all the experiences that we've had. We ask that you be with this family, all of us, and just surround us with your love and your presence. And may this time today bring us closer together and just allow us to be, just have Harriet in our memories. We ask all this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thanks.
I come to the garden alone while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, the song of God is closing, and He walks with me, and He talks with me, and He tells me I am His own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. He speaks, and the sound of His voice is so sweet, the birds hush their singing, and the melody that He gave to me within my heart is ringing, and He walks with me, and He talks with me, and He tells me I am His own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known.
Go. And so I've got a few pictures here of Mom in her early years, and you'll notice that I think that's Jay beside her, and then Cappy in the middle there with the fat cheeks on the right side. A couple other photos. We have a little montage coming up. This is Mom when she had married Dad in the first years of the marriage, and they were in Germany, in Frankfurt. And she was just beautiful, you know. I'm very opinionated on that, but let me see. This is not, there we go. And then we move into obviously her wedding picture, which is one of the really, really pretty ones that we've got. And then the beginnings of our family together with Wiz and myself and Dad. And then we've got grandkids popping into the scene. They didn't pop in this large, they were smaller at some point. And that's AJ and Ben and Michaela. And then we've got older pictures of these kids, but this is Miles and Henry. And so Mom was surrounded by grandkids, and they were all boys. And I don't know if she would know what to do with a little girl, but she has all boys surrounding her. in her life. And so what I want to do just briefly is talk about this is just a map. I'm a geographer, and so I thought I always have to have a map. And so we've got a map of the places that Mom had lived in, and really 4 epochs. And I've only got 3 mentioned here, but I would look at the first one, and ages 0 to 7. She was born in Greenwood, South Carolina, later moved to Columbia. And at age 3, almost age 3, Aunt Jay was born, her sister was born. And then something significant happened with their lives as far as World War II happening, and their father he enlisted in the Army and was trained in different locations, and the family moved to these different locations. And so from the ages of 5 to 7, she was very, very mobile with Aunt Jay and herself at that time. Cappy was yet to be born. I don't think the first place they moved was up in, let me go to this next slide here. There we go. So their dad was trained up in Michigan in Kalamazoo, but later moved to Salina, Kansas. And the family moved with him. They were there for that 1 year. Later they moved down to Mississippi and Grenada. And then Opelika, I think, was also a place where they briefly lived too, according to some of the family members. And then later, Granddaddy would be shipped out to Europe and was part of the European theater, and the family moved back to Columbia at that time. After Granddaddy returned, the second epoch occurred as far as them living. And actually, this is not part of that. I'm sorry. Let's see how I go back. Well, we'll stay right here on this scene. But basically, they lived in different places. When Granddaddy returned, they went to Marietta, Georgia, where they lived for some time. Uncle Cappy was born at that time. Later, they would move to Falls Church for a 3-year stint, and that was really during Mom's kind of middle school years, I believe. After that, they moved back to Columbia, and I believe she was around 14 when she moved back to Columbia, and she went to high school there and would later go to college. And it was during that time, too, a significant event happened. Her mom passed away from cancer at age 17. But she has a degree from the University of South Carolina. And when she graduated, her first job out of college, she was recruited to work for the CIA up in DC. And so she had a very short stint, because even the first weekend that she went up to interview, she met my dad at that time. And that really pushed her towards leaving her career at CIA, because her relationship with Dad developed within a 3-month period, and then they had a 3-month engagement, and then they were off married and off to Germany. So that was very, very fast. In Germany, they were there from 1960 to 62, and that was the time that I was born. And after they did their stint in Germany, and at that time, Aunt Jay and Uncle Bill were also stationed over there, and I believe Susan, I believe possibly Bill were also born there. I don't know if Bill was, but I know Susan was. They wound up moving back to the States after their Germany time, and lived in the cities of Atlanta, later Panama City. I think that was around Dad's first tour in Vietnam. In Panama City, they wanted to be around Aunt Jay and Uncle Bill at that time. When Dad returned from Vietnam in 67-ish, I believe, they moved to Philadelphia, and that's when my sister Wiz was born, over in Valley Forge. And we lived there for a couple years, and Dad went back for another tour in Raleigh. I went to, not a tour in Raleigh, a tour in Vietnam, and Mom moved to Raleigh to be around the Tolmans. Later, after Dad returned, he was stationed up in the DC area, so we moved to Fairfax for our longest extent of time living in one place. About 1983, I probably might get this wrong, but 83 or 84, they uprooted their time in Fairfax and moved to Wilmington, and then lived in Wilmington that entire time, except for a couple of years when we had moved back to from Boston. Our family had moved to Raleigh, so they moved to Raleigh for a little bit of time. I need to let Bess in and Ed. There we go. So that really is the time period that, as far as the locations, I always do well when we look at locations. And then this next slide, though, Wilmington was really interesting, and this gives a little character of Mom. So I did a slide of the places she's lived. She and Dad have moved and lived in Wilmington. And the blue dots right there, if you guys can see that, she's lived in 8 different places with Dad. That's good news. Throughout the Wilmington area. And just to give you a perspective, I think Aunt Jay and Uncle Bill have lived there about the same period of time, and together I think they've been in 2 residences each. And so if you've been involved with Mom moving from place to place, a couple of the places she basically had a cup of coffee there and then they moved. And so we moved a bunch during that time. And so I wanted just to give a little quick overview of the perspective of where they were in the history of their time together. And it gives a good formulation of that.
Let's fly way up to the clouds, away from the maddening crowds. We can sing in the glow of a star that I know of, where lovers enjoy peace of mind. Let us leave the confusion and all disillusion behind. All behind. Just like birds of a feather, a rainbow together we'll find. My happy heart sings. Your love has given me wings. Yeah, yeah, yeah. La 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 la. Whoa, 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 whoa. Let's fly way up to the clouds, away from the maddening crowds. We could sing in the glow of a star that I know of, where lovers enjoy peace of mind. Let us leave the confusion and all disillusion behind. All behind. Just like birds of a feather, a rainbow together we'll find. Dream, 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 dream. Dream, dream, dream when I want you. In my arms when I want you. And all your charms whenever I want you. All I have to do is dream. Dream, dream, dream when I feel blue in the night, and I need you to hold me tight whenever I want you. All I have to do is dream. I can make you mine, taste your lips of wine anytime, night or day. my life away. I need you so that I could die. I love you so, and that is why whenever I want you, all I have to do is dream, 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 dream. I can make you mine, taste your lips of wine, anytime, night or day. Only trouble is, gee whiz, I'm dreaming.
Da 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 da. Hey.
And that is why whenever I want you, all I have to do is dream, 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 dream.
I got a little bit of that. Nice cha-cha.
We'll have to do it again.
Nice conga. Exhausted. Okay, I'm gonna apologize. This is a little long, but it was every day I wrote a little bit more, and there was more to say because she was a huge part of my life. Thank you all for being here to celebrate my mom, Harriet King Iiames. I'm Wiz, her daughter. Years ago, my brother John joked about the close relationship Mom and I had. Mom had a fairly large oil portrait of me, not John, painted. And there were many photos of me around the house, not to mention a 3-foot-tall neon sign that said Wiz, Ted just reminded me. At the time, Ted and I were married, but our boys hadn't been born yet. John laughed that one day he'd open a secret door to find an altar to me, complete with more paintings, photos, and candles. We all laughed at the idea. Even Mom doubled over, but there was some truth to this. We were close, really close. We truly loved being with each other and sharing with each other. She was my confidant. She always knew what to say to help me through a tough day. You see, she was always there for me. She always answered my phone calls, opened her door, her heart. She listened. She really listened. Our close bond didn't go unnoticed by my friends either. Recently, I received a sympathy card from a friend from college. She wrote me that all the girls thought Mom was the funny, cool mom, and she envied our relationship because at the time she didn't have that with her own mom, though she does now. Sometime in my 20s, it hit me that my mom's intense love for me was likely due to her losing her own mother at a young age. She was forging a relationship that she and her mother, my grandmother, never had the chance to further develop. That is a gift I'm most grateful for. We spoke once, twice, sometimes 3 times a day. Saying this aloud now doesn't sound really healthy, but it was. During my 20s and 30s, when I was living and working in New York and later Chicago, you could hear my fellow office mates yelling, "Wiz's mom on one!" What I wouldn't give to hear that again. Since she's passed, I've had that feeling over and over. It goes deep into my physical and emotional being. Not 2 days after she died, Miles, our 12-year-old, ran in to tell me he received a 6th grade superlative award for his middle school chorus. My instinct was to reach for my phone and call Mom. You see, there wasn't a Grandy whose love and pride could compare to the scale of love she had for her grandsons. I know John and Michaela would agree. She was and will always be the one who always had their backs and melted their hearts. Behind Ted and me, she was their biggest fan. I know her friends got an earful of their good looks and accomplishments during those Friday lunches at Brasserie and many dinner parties, but trust me, it was true love. She couldn't help herself. She even overcame her fear of riding elevators, once, to reach the maternity ward floor at the hospital in Chicago a day after Henry was born. Nothing was going to keep this Grandy from embracing her newest grandchild. In addition to her intense love of family, Mom was renowned for her storytelling ability. She had that gift to draw everyone in to sit at her knee and lean in at her side. On one trip back in the late 70s or early 80s to Florida to visit my granddaddy with Mom and my brother, we made the decision to stop at one of those roadside zoos. I can't remember why Mom was sporting her fur coat, but there she was, like a movie star, off I-95 South in the Florida heat, walking through this zoo. She stopped a little too long to look at a jaguar, while John and I had run up ahead a little. Just at the moment Mom yelled to us, "Look at this gorgeous cat," the jaguar sprayed her from head to toe, including directly into her mouth, which caused her to gag dramatically. Well, that beautiful cat saw that beautiful fur coat and my beautiful mom in it and did its business. After she cleaned herself up and stowed the marked coat in the trunk, we finally arrived at Granddaddy's. She told him the entire story slowly, dramatically, with perfect pauses and inflections, like the great storyteller she was. After she finished, Granddaddy smiled and asked, "Harriet, why are you still making up stories?" Fact, fiction, or a little bit of both, she could make the most mundane story become the most interesting. In addition to regaling family and friends with stories, Mom loved some adventure. Though she hadn't been flying off to exotic locations or cruising around the world, she was able to make the absolute best of the littlest moments. When we were younger, along with our aunts and cousins, we were known to take trips to nowhere. And they literally were nowhere because I'm not exactly sure where we ended up. That was the beauty of the adventure. We'd load up the car with the kids, usually no men were invited. Our small suitcases, a little bit of gas, a map, and off we go. After hours of driving with no determined destination, or at least that's what we were told, it would get dark, we'd stop at a motel, hopefully with a pool, and we'd all be in heaven. We didn't have to go far to get away on our trips to nowhere. Today, it's hard to imagine such outings with young children, no cell phones, no hotel reservations, and no GPS. These trips that she, along with my aunt and cousins, masterminded are among some of my most fond, magical childhood memories. When I decided to leave a perfectly good job at National Geographic Television in Washington, D.C. and move to New York City without a new job at the age of 24, Mom fully supported me. She understood that sense of adventure she had instilled in me, and I truly believe she wanted me to live that exciting life. She and Dad took advantage of my time there. For someone who didn't fly, take elevators, or ride escalators, Mom managed to make it work and see me and Ted. Over the years, they braved the interstate and busy city streets to visit museums, take in as many Broadway shows she could, eat and drink outside cafes, and soak up the New York City life. I loved that she loved New York. Years later, after Ted and I moved to Chicago, Mom's sister, Aunt Jay, proposed that Mom, me, Aunt Jay, my first cousin Susan, and her daughter Hannah meet up in New York for a graduation trip for Hannah. It was pure bliss. Mom and I bunked at Ted's cousin Sarah and Dan's Upper West Side apartment, where she held court in their pull-out couch while Sarah made coffee in the morning. And in the wee hours of the night, after we returned from singing at karaoke bars, piano bars, and taking in an off-Broadway show, Dan would greet us at the door, pour a glass of vodka for we three, slice up a salami, and tell us stories of the latest musical he was performing in. He did this because Mom asked him to tell her every detail about his life. That was her specialty. As they wrote in her obituary, Mom had the ability to make everyone feel like the most important person in the room. And they were. She was genuinely interested. Whether you were family, a friend, or the waitress bringing her signature oaky Chardonnay and a plate of oysters, she was laser focused on you. Our last night in New York City, Aunt Jay, Mom, and I convinced a pedicab cyclist to let the three of us, usually only two, ride through the center of Times Square. I have a few pictures and some video of that night. It was magical and a bit dangerous. Mom loved every second of it. One day years ago, when I was a teenager, I overheard Mom talking with her friends. Some of you on the Zoom call may have been in the room where it happened. They had all just returned from a funeral reception. Mom announced, "When I die, I don't want everyone standing around, laughing, eating tea sandwiches, drinking iced tea, and having a grand time. Instead, I want everyone to tear off all their clothes and run screaming and wailing into the ocean waves." Everyone broke out laughing, but I think Mom was kind of serious. So when the time is right and you find yourselves near the ocean, well, you'll know what to do. During Mom's final weeks, it was a daily ritual for me to play one of her favorite singers, Andrea Bocelli. His voice, to many and especially Mom, transcended her to a happier place. As she rested bedridden, his voice seemed to lift her away. Many times she would close her eyes, rest her head and smile. It was her soundtrack. The song she loved the most was Conti Partiro, or Time to Say Goodbye. Looking back now, it was quite fitting. Now we're saying goodbye to you, Mom. It's hard to find the words, it's hard to put into words the void I feel with you gone. I'm only comforted that you are free now and dancing above us all. I love you, Mom, higher than the highest mountain, deeper than the deepest ocean, always.
Yeah, Harriet and I were fast friends, and we quickly appreciated each other, respected each other, and not after long loved each other. We shared a lot of laughs. She had a quick wit and a big heart. And what I'm most appreciative that she was, the love she gave, and the role she took as grandmother to my boys, but then also bringing us all together as the matriarch and keeping the lines. And so I've got to know all of you and can call you family and appreciate those relationships. And a lot of that stems from Harriet. So let's, in her honor, keep these ties.
Something short. So I'm Henry, Randy's grandson, and she was so special to me because of her effort to make me, my brother, and my cousins the most loved grandsons possible. Even when it was hard for her to get out of the house, she did all that she could to be around us wherever we were. Some of my dearest memories of Brandy were at the restaurants in Wilmington or on the beach soon after. She made all of us know how special and cared for we all were just by saying I love you one more time. Missing her is going to be hard for me and my family, especially given that we couldn't see her much the past couple months. But her peaceful and loving passing gives reassurance that her love is still with all of us. I know she's smiling down on us now.
An eagle's just another bird until he can spread his wings. River is just a sheet of ice till winter turns to spring. And though the clouds may block the sun, don't mean that it's left the sky. Just when you think you've seen it all, there's more than meets the eye. Like things I dream and things I feel, more to me than I reveal. And 'cause I shine in quiet ways, don't mean I'm someone you recognize. I'm a diamond in the rough, a dreamer in disguise. An eagle's just another bird until he can spread his wings. I'll sing a quick line. Mom loved Patsy Cline, and Dad loved it too, and we used to sing it all the time. And actually, the day before she passed, this was the song I sang a little bit of. I'm just singing a little bit of it because I don't think I could get through the whole thing, but crazy, I'm crazy for feeling so lonely. I'm crazy, crazy for feeling so blue. I knew you'd love me as long as you wanted, and then someday you leave me for somebody new. Worry, why do I let myself worry? Wondering, what in the world did I do? Oh, crazy for thinking that my love could hold you. I'm crazy for trying and crazy for crying, and I'm crazy for loving you.
Awesome.
You want to start?
You do my
I'll
part.
follow you, start.
My aunties on each side of me are stealing your mind. I wonder if their houses are full of Mrs. Mine. I think they must have asked the hens to teach them how to perch. I like to rub my knees, but that's called fidgeting church. I found a fly in church today, a fly hurt its wing. It entered just as everyone was standing up to sing. There's a friend for little children up above the bright blue sky. Might have been so good that they let Mickey play fly. I thought it was such a lovely game. Didn't fidget then. The fly was walk across my room before I get to 10. And just as he was nearly there, the man said, "Let's pray." And Annie shook their heads at me and brushed my fly away. Oh, you is very dark and high, and I am very small. And Annie says it's wrong in church to look at it all. But I think the windows open with the glass is painted red. I can feel the scrape of sky shining on my head. Oh, friend of little children, you were once as small as me. You know how very, very dull a child in church can be. As if you're hanging just above that tiny patch of sky. Feel sorry for a little girl and send another fly.
Yay! That was awesome! Well done. You still got it.
Good.
Okay. Well, John has already given you a little preview of what I was going to say, and Wiz, and she said it so beautifully. Harriet and I, when we were growing up, I guess I could have been called the tag-along kid, because Harriet was 3 years older than I was, so I was always the youngest in the crowd, especially with all of our cousins. And they all were just a little bit older, and I was always the young'un who they didn't really want to hang around. But Mama would always say when they were going out to play, "Now, take your sister along." And so they had to. And I was always delighted because I knew that wherever they went or whatever they would do, it would be great fun. So we grew up, and I still tagged along. When we were much older, in 1960, Harriet and John got married. And 2 months later, Bill and I got married. And then just not long after that, John got an assignment to Germany. And 2 months after that, Bill and I went to Germany. So there we are, both thousands and thousands of miles away. And we decided to start our families. And so little John and my Susan were both born
And
in
Bill.
Germany.
And Bill.
Well, Bill was later.
Well, he was born in Germany.
But Susan and John were born 2 months apart. So we've always had this very, very close connection. So when we came back from Germany, well, actually, I shouldn't even say before we came back, because we raised those two babies that first year, and being so far away from family, but having each other, and having John and Bill, and having Susan and John, it was a wonderful, wonderful experience that not very many people have. So anyway, we grew up, and we came back to the States. And so John and Bill got orders, off and on, to go to isolated and remote tours, such as Vietnam, Alaska, Vietnam, and so forth. Well, of course, Harriet and I could not go, would not go. And, but we would always find each other, and we would live close by. We would just move there. And so, so we always just stayed really, really close. We moved to Wilmington 34 years ago. And the reason that we came was primarily because Harriet and John and Kathy and Marcia were both here. And the family was back together again. When I think back on it, it's obvious why I was so close to Harriet. I mean, I loved her. I looked up to her. I really did. I really admired her. She would give me great advice, sometimes when I didn't even ask for it. And she was just a lot of fun. As you've heard earlier, she could tell the greatest stories, and just the audience was spellbound. and I always envied that talent. In the past couple of weeks, we've heard a lot of descriptions of Harriet. You know, the sparkle in her eye, and the way she loved to dance, and her love for her family, and the way she could tell, or the way she could talk to people in a room, and they would feel like they were the only ones there. Those were very, very special talents of hers, and everybody who knew her knew it. I think that, I don't know, I can add one more thing to that, and that is that Harriet was by far the best sister that I could have ever had, and I already miss her terribly. Thanks.
Yes.
That's a yes. Oh, my sister Harriet, she was a charmer. She was a Southern lady, smart, well-read, and proper. But she was great, great fun to be around, and everybody knew it. She made solid and lifelong friendships with some truly unique people. When she would get the family and friends together, the kids used to laugh and say, when she would give you your time, they felt like the spotlight just swung over, and the room would grow quiet and the other lights would dim. A little bit of pressure there for all the kids, but they loved it. She was always busy. She was always planning the next outing. Nag's Head at Christmas, Nancy Tolman's 55th birthday celebration at the beach, or just dancing down at the Sea Witch. But far and away, the most important thing to Harriet was her family. And it was true not only for her immediate family, but for all of those people she grew up with. I was in Fairfax in '81, and she was there, and she helped me sell the house that we were in. And Marcia and I picked up and moved to Wilmington, and that was like July of '81. Harriet and Bill and Jay were still in Oklahoma. So come Thanksgiving, Harriet and John piled in the car and came on down to Wilmington for Thanksgiving. We'd been there 3 months, I think, or 4 months at the time. And she could feel the strings of youth pulling her back to North Carolina. North Carolina had been one of her favorite spots. Had spent some time at Rachel Beach as a child. So she decided she's coming down for Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving was on Thursday. Well, on Sunday, she and John wrote a contract on a house down on Front Street. I had been here 4 months. She'd been here 3 days. She had just one of the strongest wills you've ever seen. You know, she knew what she was all about. She could work a crowd like nobody else. Not long after that, Jay and Bill joined us in Wilmington. And Harriet had found her co-conspirator. Jay was back. And she and Jay drugged the family all through everywhere in North Carolina. If you found yourself in the car on a Saturday or a Sunday with Harriet Iiames or Jay Wilson, you were going to Jacksonville. You didn't know it, but you were going to Jacksonville. And you were going to walk through Sneed's Ferry, and you were going to go through Jacksonville, and you were going to go through Jones County. You were going to traipse through graveyards. You were going to look up records. You were going to see old home sites that probably were in the family at some point in time, but that were now only connected by a dirt road. And all the time, the whole time you were in the car, Harriet was telling stories one after the other about the different people in the family. And they were often hilarious. They were often very notable. And the amazing thing wasn't just the fun. The amazing thing was that through that storytelling, she reminded every one of us, my kids and myself included, of the love and the family that she belonged to, that we belonged to, and just reminded us, you know, these people were real. They were remarkable in their day. The stories are fantastic. I wish I had time to tell you a few. But we came through it stronger and tighter than ever. She's my sister. She'll be missed, but not forgotten.
sei lontana, sogno all'orizzonte, manca le parole. Io sì lo so che sei con me, tu mia luna, tu sei qui con me. Mio sole, tu sei qui con me, con me, con me, con me. Time to say goodbye. Paesi che non ho
such heartfelt and extraordinary evocations of Harriet's presence through the love that she inspired in other people, that there's no way that people as remote as cousins Ernie and cousin Jerry can really plunge into this. I want to say to everyone here, I don't need to say it, but everyone, I want to say it to you anyway. The wonderful Harriet that you're seeing evoked through the responses that you're getting from the people who loved her so much was very real and very alive and very present wherever she was. John and Wiz had asked that perhaps Ernie and I could tell some tales of Harriet from our own experience. I won't take very long, but I want to go back to the very beginning. There are plenty of others in this group who remember Harriet as part of their lives from the very first recollections. It is certainly true for me, because I don't remember a time when I was alive that Harriet wasn't part of it. And Jeremy, I have to say that it was always Harriet and Jeremy. And those names together made such a marvelous evocation of fun, delight, and even when we were 3 or 4 years old, love. Harriet and Jeremy would come to see their country cousins 12 miles out of Jacksonville. Harriet loved coming to see us because she could take off her shoes and walk in the sand. Frances would never have let her do that anywhere else, but Frances didn't know it when she was visiting her country cousins. We had a marvelous time. We visited her great aunt Zoe, my grandmother, and we loved it. Let me skip forward about 20 years from when we were dancing in the snow in Onslow County, North Carolina. You'll notice in that panoply of pictures that we were seeing of Harriet's life, there were a couple of very glamorous pictures made from when she was a late teenager, early 20s. There was one in which she was dressed in evening clothes. I was there for that. I remember not that particular picture, but I remember something very like that. Harriet came to be my date, her cousin, she was my date, for a dance weekend at Davidson, and Louis Armstrong was playing music, and Harriet had a very good time. So did I. That was the marvelous kind of thing that we did as we waited for that day in Fort Lee when I went up there to sing her out into her wedding, which was great fun, and I love that a lot. Let me just tell you one example of the kind of adventure that Harriet and I had. As you all know, we had lots and lots of relatives, and you've already heard referred to from Cappy, the tours around the countryside of Onslow and Jones and Craven County, looking at old houses and things like that. There were a lot of those, and I'm not going to tell you about them all now, but there was one special one that came associated with a story that Harriet loved inordinately. And it was the story about Nathan Foscue and how he got his wife, who had been Susan Oldfield. There was a big house that the Oldfields lived in that was about 12 miles from where the Foscues lived, over in Jones County. And every Christmas, they had a big Christmas dance. And the dance was in the 3rd floor of the house, and the great 4 stairs going all the way up to the 3rd floor. Nathan Foscue, whose great friend lived in the house and had a young 12-year-old sister, whose name was Susan. And Susan had been allowed to come to the party for the first time in her life. Nathan Foscue was climbing the steps, and Susan happened to be coming down the steps, and she tripped, I think probably because she saw this handsome young man coming up, and she was really taken aback. And he caught her, and he said to her, "You're beautiful. I'm going to marry you when you grow up." 12 years later, he proposed, and she married him. That intrigued Harriet enormously. And he was, of course, our great grandfather, and she was our great grandmother. And Harriet loved that story about them. Well, the house that happened in was built in 1792. And along about the 1900 and whatever it was, when we were at the 80s and 90s, we were going to see it. One time, it was in very bad shape. It hadn't been lived in since 1938, and it was deteriorating pretty badly. No one lived in it. It was used for storage. But we wanted to see it. We had a cousin, Del Ripley from New Orleans, who had come to visit. And so Harriet and I, we were at the beach. Harriet was in Wilmington. And so we were going to take Harriet to see the old field house, the wonderful house. We got there, we climbed up the broken steps, and we got into the front of the house, Harriet and Del and I. And when I turned around after letting them in to close the door, I noticed that the ceiling was covered with bats, all sleeping away attached to the ceiling. What on earth was I going to do? Harriet saw me, and so she looked up and she saw them too. Now, those of you who know and love Harriet know that Harriet would not have liked the bats very much, but she knew perfectly well that if we acknowledged the bats, that Del would not stay and Harriet would not like to stay either. So very quietly, we went through the house and looked at all the things, being very careful not to alarm the bats, which we succeeded in doing, and spent the afternoon looking at the house, which everyone there, all three of us, were very happy to see. We got back home that night to Wilmington, and all of the people to whom we told the story were simply aghast. The fact that Harriet had survived the bats, and that we had had such a good time showing Del the house that 200 years earlier had caused such a wonderful event in our family, as to find a wife for the young lady who lives there. Harriet had a good time. That was the kind of thing she turned into an event and a delight. Such adventures with people she loved, giving them pleasure, and in turn receiving the kind of pleasure that it thrills my heart to remember always Harriet had and gave to me and to everyone else who loved her. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Jerry.
Can I say something? That's my mother, Del Ripley.
That's Susan.
And so I am here for Del because she adored Harriet.
Yeah. Thanks, Susan.
All of this is hard to follow because it's it's spoken with great love and Harriet's memory, and it's hard to go through something like this, even for me in a casual, in this casual setting. My memories go back to the very beginning, like Jerry's. We were children together. Usually we were around each other on vacations to Jacksonville or Wrightsville Beach. And we were almost the same age, so we were natural conspirators, co-conspirators. And we had I think, a mutual affinity for each other. Just one of those nice things that happens. You don't always respond to all of your friends or your cousins or your family necessarily. But we had good chemistry. And my next memories of her, probably the more vivid ones, started when we were about 12, 13, 14 years old, when she was in Fairfax. And just before and I don't remember all the peregrinations. I mean, it was pretty amusing to see you list all these places that she's lived. It was always said that she moved every 20 minutes, and looking at that map, that is sort of confirmation of it. But I remember I probably was 13, and we were out at their place, and 13 is an awkward age for a young man, was for me anyway. And the adults were in the living room doing what adults do, you know, telling lies and drinking fast. And we were in another room, maybe the kitchen or the dining room. And one of her friends from school came by, and this was a boy our age, you know, 13, just 13 probably. And she introduced me, and he stuck out his hand to shake hands. Now, no one in my particular cohort shook hands. That was something the adults did. I was sort of taken aback by that. It's a memory that I still have, and I still laugh about it. We had very different kinds of experiences growing up. I guess you would, you know, that's natural enough. But when we were together, we were sort of like frick and frack. And as time went on, I loved to tease her. You know, little boys often are accused of teasing the girls that they like in 4th grade, 3rd grade, that sort of thing. And I had that sort of inclination toward Harriet as long as we knew each other. As long as she could fight back, I was willing to tease her as hard as I could on any subject. And she always fought back with great alacrity. She was very bright, very sharp. I don't know. I'm going to miss her terribly. We're on deck now, our particular generation, and I don't think about that a whole lot particularly. I mean, every once in a while, when I get up in the morning and I can barely walk for the first 5 minutes, I'm reminded of mortality, but you know, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. But now we're beginning to lose friends and contemporaries from college and even grade school. And the same thing happens in families, all families, and it's a tough thing. I know this is particularly going to be hard on John. And I've said in that note that I sent you, I'm glad that he has the 2 of you to help him get through it. So I don't know. I don't have any really anything else that, I mean, you could talk about her all night. You know, there are no grand stories that leap out at me because there were so many little things. Some of them were just momentary, and some of them went on over a whole week of vacation time. I remember coming downstairs one Christmas at Jacksonville. We were probably 7 or 8, something like that. And the Santa had come, and he had obviously had a lot of help loading all the stuff into the living room, but this living room was just piled with things. And I remember the 2 of us coming down together, and I'm sure Jay was right there on our heels. And we were just blown away by that little experience. At night, we would listen to the adults talking downstairs through the stovepipe. There was an oil stove in the living room, and you could hear the conversations pretty clearly through that tin smokestack. I'm sure they would have been a lot more circumspect if they had realized just how well that pipe transmitted conversation. But we were gossips. We had an eye on everybody. We had an opinion about everybody. We shared all of this. We generally agreed most of the time. Nancy's coming up, and you know, she was 6 years older than we were, and we watched her her various suitors come, and we were very critical of most of those people. And as I said in my note, and I will repeat it because it's just apt, for me anyway. I said it's a miracle that she made the right choice in the end. But anyway, we were great compatriots, and we'll miss her terribly. And Barbara's here. I don't know whether you want to jump in.
She's special. She was wonderful. I really was fond of Harriet. We'll miss her.
Thank you guys.
All right, so I'm so surprised, Wiz, that you didn't mention this, but when I first met Harriet, it wasn't long before I knew all the stories of the family. I went to Sneed's Ferry, I went to the Foscue Plantation, I went to the cemetery in Jacksonville, I saw all of the genealogy, and that was probably within my first month of dating John. So I knew all of it, and I'd never met a true Southern woman, and her accent was very distinctive, and Wiz would call it Southern dramatic. And one of the things that I remember was when she came up, when we moved to Boston, and I had Ben, who was her first grandchild. And she had ways of just communicating things in her Southern dramatic way. And I remember she held Ben in her hands and said, "This is Benjamin Shepherd Iiames, the center of my universe." And we have that on videotape, and it's exactly how she would speak. I mean, things were just to the extreme, and I just learned to really love that. I mean, a trip to the grocery store that you went with her on, you came back, and she would relay to everyone how we had gone to the grocery store, and it was strange. You never thought you were actually with her because the story was so dramatic. She added so many details. One of the things I also loved about her was she studied people. She really, really enjoyed people and watching them and getting to know kind of what made them tick. And there were times we had conversations. She met many of my friends, and she would see similarities of my friends that I hadn't noticed. But because she would study people, she would notice those things about them. Our times together as a family were always with charades, some form of interaction, things that would really draw us together as a family. And family meant more than just her children and her grandchildren. Family meant her sister and her brother and her cousins, and on and on and on and on. So my family expanded, it exploded when I came into the Iiames family. So I'm gonna miss that part of her great storytelling, her way of just communicating to the extreme. I'm gonna miss her a lot.
Hey everyone, I'm AJ. I am the second grandchild of Harriet. So I guess I'll just share a couple memories I have pretty quick. One of them was when I was in middle school, I started, we had to take a shagging class. And as you guys know, she loved to party. So anytime, once I started learning how to dance and everything and do the beach dancing, anytime that we were down in Wilmington, she would just love to dance with me. And it was just so much fun being able to twirl my grandmother. It's just a memory that will stick in my mind for a long time. And I know I have pictures and stuff of us dancing, and it's just funny to think about those things, you know. Grandy, as we called her, she was an amazing woman. I think, especially during these times of, you know, COVID and social injustice and all of that, she really took a genuine interest in people. And that's what stuck out the most to me. I have many friends of different races and ethnicities, and we would often me and my brother would take our friends down to Wilmington to stay with Grandy and Granddaddy. And every time I brought somebody of a different race or ethnicity, she would just like hone in on them, stay up till like 11:30 at night, just talking about where they came from, everything about them. And it was incredible. My friends walked away like, wow, she really cares. And I think during this time, it means all the more, you know, with everything going on, just to see how she would interact with some of my best friends who are still impacted by that, just her being able to reach them on a different level, and a level that a lot of people didn't get to see. And she really loved my wife. She took a very genuine interest in everything she did. She loved her probably more than me, honestly. But she was always bragging about her and talking about how she would kick Cappy's butt in tennis, and you know, she was just an amazing woman, and I think those are some of the memories I'll look back on. I did have one more memory. I guess I didn't know I was going to share, but when I was in preschool, she would share this story to everyone. Everybody. So I knew her name was Harriet, and she was coming to our school to meet my teacher. And so she came, and she's like, she talked to my teacher and was like, can you introduce us, AJ? And I was like, yeah, this is my grandma, Harriet Tubman. And she I think she's probably told every one of you that story, and it just makes me laugh the way that she took it. She's like, no, I'm not really Harriet Tubman. And you know, my teacher was a black lady as well, so she's like, I don't think you're Harriet Tubman. But just some funny memories with Grandy. She definitely was a character, and she definitely could light up a room, and she definitely knew how to party. But I think that's all I got.
Thanks, Age. Dad, I'm going to have you share now if you'd like to.
Okay, Dad, you want to share? You want to talk?
I'm going to thank everybody that spoke today. It just reinforces all the things that I knew about Harriet. One thing I want you all to know is that I loved her very much. She was a wonderful person in so many ways, and I'm going to miss her terribly. And thank you.
Thanks, Dad. Yeah, as we close out, I just have a few thoughts too. I've been able to share a little bit, but Mom was my mom. You know, Wiz mentioned that she had these big portraits and everything else, but that didn't minimize the feelings that I knew she had for me. And I remember when I was working at my office at EPA for the first time, she would call me also 2 or 3 times a day. And at times I was like, Mom, I really have to get some work done here. I think as a guy, I run out of conversational pieces. I don't know how guys are, but it's like, there's only so much I can talk about. And I was talking about that to a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, and she said, you're going to want that memory of her voice always calling you. And I think that sticks in my mind because I'm not going to have those phone calls, you know, of that voice and just the funniness that goes along with that. But she really cared for our family. Dad, she loved you so much. You know, it was game on with how much she adored you, and you both complemented each other very well in a lot of ways. And I just wanted to let you know that from here, and we're going to be together in 30 minutes or so. Eating one of her favorite foods is barbecue and drinking a glass of Chardonnay. You those who knew her, she loved her Chardonnay, and we're going to be able to do that for her. And but she loves you dearly, Dad. And we had a fun growing up period. I think of the trips to nowhere she would take us antiquing everywhere. And, you know, we would have these Friday nights of going to these, what was that place called with?
Law's Auction House.
Yeah, Law's Auction House. And we just have memories of smelling old things like old furniture and hot dogs at Law's, and they would let us run free everywhere. It was back in a time.
You probably know about that, right?
Yeah. So, but she was an advocate too. I think she stood in front of the bulldozers that were about to basically develop some land that was over by the Mews in Fairfax. She was there was a high school friend of mine who was from Finland, who was not going to be allowed to walk in the graduation ceremony. He'd only been there a year, and he was a visiting student. And she went to the principal and made sure that he was able to walk with us and be part of that. So she was very much in the mind of doing that. She did things excellently. She was so personable, and she was very successful as a realtor. As a bridge player, she adored doing that. She loved doing that. She was excellent in doing that. And, I know a lot of her friends who were part of this conversation today and listening know Mom in a different way, as far as her lunches and her bridge playing and all those different things. And as all parents are, she looked at Wiz and myself and our kids, and there was nothing really we could do wrong. And I just remember, she was so excited when I started working for the federal government because her dad did. And I was always being compared. She would say, so are you a super grade yet? When are you going to become a super grade? That's what Granddaddy was. And I was like, Mom, it takes a little time, and they don't even call it that anymore. So, and so finally I got to what she qualified as a super grade, and she was so excited, but I could have been not that, and she was still so excited about anything that we did. And I would call her with any malady, and she would talk me down off the ledge saying, oh, you're fine. Oh, I've had that before. Everything was, I've had that before, and you're fine. So there's a lot of memories, and I know we're going to miss her. And she really wanted to know that Dad was going to be, I think she was very secure in the fact that she was leaving us, that both Wiz and I and our families would be together and helping Dad through this and working it through. And I do appreciate all the cards that have come in, and Ernie, your note was really meaningful, and I really do appreciate the things that you mentioned. And I just want to express from both our families that we miss her terribly, but she had such an impact, and I think that's what we're here for, is just the memory of that time. Okay, so John Adams, and again, I ask you to be brief because we have dinner tonight, so I'm going to unmute you, John, or you unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All I want to say is I want to raise a glass of wine to an exceptional and beautiful, wonderful, loving lady. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Okay, and I'm going to butt in and say, y'all are drinking already?
That's Susan. Thank you, Susan. Anybody else before we close off? Nat, I see you. So why don't you unmute yourself? Go ahead, Nat.
Harriet was wonderful. Harriet, I don't know what to say, but in thinking about Harriet, I remember that whenever I was going to see Harriet, there was an aura of expectation. It was like, what's gonna happen? Because you did sort of anticipate this is gonna be special. And it was such a pleasure to introduce my children to Harriet and to have her embrace them. And I think they very quickly learned that this little lady made a big impression. And when she came into a room, she made a lot of hearts warm and a lot of people happy. She reached people. It was this electricity thing. She just had an electric personality. And it was very special to just have her as a guiding light for us. She's sort of a role model for me socially. And I hope that I can do honor to her memory by being half the man that she was a woman. And she was just so special. And we'll miss her dearly because she was a shining light. And I love her dearly and we'll miss her greatly. But we have the John and we have the Wiz and we have others now that we can look to help shine the light for us the way Harriet used to.
Great.
God bless you all.
Thank you. I'm gonna go ahead and share a screen if that's okay with you, and it's like 2 or 3 minutes, and really love seeing everybody here, and it meant a lot. And I will, if it's been a long afternoon, but I'm gonna post this on my Facebook for those people in this group, and you're more than welcome to listen to a few of the things if you can, especially Aunt Jay and Uncle Bill. They need to watch this. So, but thank you again, and this is the last little bit here, if I can. Thanks, guys. Love you all, and have a great evening. Bye-bye. I'll unmute you all. You can all say goodbye to each other. How's that? Bye-bye. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you so much, John and Wiz. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye. Bye, Billy.
Bye-bye.
Jerry, love you, man. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye. Lynn, good to see you, Lynn.
Yeah.
And thanks. Hey, Bob and Sarah. Good to see you guys. Are you in Raleigh?
We are.
Hated your talk, Cappy. Thank you.
Bob and Sarah, we should have like a lawn time when we can have a meal or something outside. You guys up for that?
Love to do that.
Okay, let's do it.
Don, are you in Wilmington? Where are you? John, where are you?
Oh, we're in Raleigh.
You're in Raleigh. Okay, up higher. Okay.
Gary and Susan, good seeing you guys.
You as well. Thanks
Yeah.
for doing this.
All right, Jen, we need to meet in Wilmington.
That's right.
I need to go to the beach.
That's right. Well, we hope to see everybody at some point here. Cappy and Marcia, thank you.
Loved it.
Sorry that AJ had to bring that memory up about Emily.
Hey, John.
Yes.
Super job. I mean, you did great job as a host, but as the son, just super hard and just super job. What a challenging effort. And thanks very much. This was really super.
Thank you. Thanks, Chuck and Amy. It's great seeing you guys.
Yeah. Thank you, John.
You're welcome. Thanks, Nat.
You did a good job, and
it
matters a lot.
It helps to have something and to see each other. It means a lot.
Well, I'm just the facilitator. Wiz put a lot of stuff behind the videos and everything else.
But before you go, will you now sing something too?
No, I think it bypassed the talent pool.
Bye, John. Thank you for a nice tribute to Harriet.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah. If you want me to do something athletic, that's what I would do. But I'm musically declined.
John,
thank you. Wonderful seeing everybody.
You're welcome, Aunt Jay.
John. Hey, John.
Hey,
John.
Yes.
Susan, you want to sing Long, Long Trail for 2 seconds?
Sure.
No pressure.
Ready?
I'll
let you start.
I have the delay. This was one of Mom's favorite songs, but we're going to have a little tricky time. Wait, how's it start?
That's right.
Okay. There's a long,
long, long trail a-winding into the land of my dreams, where the nightingale is singing
and the pale moon beams. There's a long, long night waiting until my dreams all come true. And the day that I'll be going down that long, long trail with you.
Wow, that's the best Zoom I've ever heard before.
We did it, Susan. Susan and I, on the last weeks of Mom, I was FaceTiming a lot of you, and because Mom, couldn't hold a phone easily, and obviously because of COVID-19 and all the other challenges, Susan and I did that on speakerphone for Mom. And at this point, Mom really wasn't responding too much, couldn't talk a lot, little whispers. But at the end, at that last part, Mom actually went with us. So she was still in charge. So that's Mom. She's gonna be in charge. Mom in charge. Harriet in charge. And all you all sending in videos. Chuck, I played that for her, and your love of reunions and instilling that in all of us. And that really was special. She listened. She couldn't respond. Her eyes were sharp. She was, still focused on it, and you could just see her responding, and it's all true, and it meant the world to her.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey guys, before we shut down, I wanted to let you know that Mom is going to be buried on the 11th of July down in Jacksonville, North Carolina, in the Cox family plot there, and that'll be an 11 a.m. time, and we're all set for that. And you're more than welcome to come. It's going to be very brief. It's going to be, just probably a 30-minute outside right there at the site. And so I'll put out emails, and if anybody wants to show up. I know with COVID, it's a challenge right now, but we'll go from there. Okay.
Thanks for the work, John.
Great. Love you guys. Since I'm the I need to leave. I'm gonna have to leave this whole thing. So everybody say your goodbyes.
Bye,
guys. You guys.
Thank you so much for being here for this tribute.
Yes.
Awesome. John, don't forget to send me the tape, John.
No, I got you. All right.
Didn't get to see anybody.
All right. Love you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Cantare. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's fly away up to the clouds, away from the maddening crowds. We can sing in the glow of a star that I know of, where lovers enjoy peace of mind. Let us leave the confusion and all disillusion behind. All behind. Just like birds of a feather, a rainbow together we'll find. Sings, your love has given me wings. Let's fly way up. Thank you.